Yeah, I'm just waiting for Ahmad.
Hamad.
Yeah, that's his name, right? Ahmad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Alright, I'll just do a quick introduction. Alright, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We're going to make a start to the class. As I've mentioned before, rules are quite simple. Please don't be static, try and get engaged. I'm going to throw a lot of questions at you, and for every question that you get right, I will throw candy at you, hopefully. So do try and get involved. Number two, the only rule that I have about this class is that as long as it's fun, informal, it's quite engaging, try to learn a lot, try to ask a lot, okay? Just make sure that you're not impolite or disrespectful, then we can have a fantastic time. This whole, the verses which you're going to look at today, it's in Surah Al-Baqarah. First question, which surah is this in the Quran? Put your hands up if you want to answer this. Okay, you didn't get it right because you spoke without putting your hands up. No, you did this and you didn't wait for me. Okay, so 1 for the guys, 0 for the girls, okay? So we'll have this brother or sister competition. This is the second chapter of the Quran, okay? And with every single chapter of the Quran, there are certain virtues attached if you recite them, if you reflect upon them, etc. One of the biggest virtues that is attached with Surah Al-Baqarah is that it is known as the peak of the Quran. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in one of the hadiths, he's mentioned that with everything has a peak, and the peak of the Quran is Surah Al-Baqarah, okay? The second chapter. And if you reflect on that a little bit, when you're at the peak, you're in which position? You're in the highest position, right? And when you're in the highest position, that means you can get an overview of everything. So this has a lot of amazing thematic values because the surah is actually the longest in the entire Quran, and it covers all the fundamentals that we need to live as a just society. It also covers all the basic tenets of faith, right? So that's why it's a very, very comprehensive surah. So I definitely recommend to really look into it whenever you have any issues. Just open it up and see what you can find. Loads of hidden gems behind it. The objectives of the class are quite straightforward. We're trying to address a section of Surah Al-Baqarah, verses 30 to 39, which discuss about the origin of man, the dialogue that happens between Adam, Eve, Satan, and God. Okay? And within those 10 verses, there are a few questions that are going to pop up. So you see here, like, there are some groups who think that Eve is the one responsible, she's evil, hence women are evil, and some linguists say that the word evil comes from the word Eve as well. So we're going to see what is the Islamic stance on that. Sisters, don't kill me yet. It's okay. Were we sent down as a punishment? Are we suffering the sin of Adam? This is another conception that we need to try and clear out. Some of the things that we want to highlight in terms of moral issues or Islamic issues that we want to try and achieve in our lives is the idea of what is the value of humility and its contrary, arrogance in our lives, right? And what are the significance of each one? Number 2, repentance. Again, a very, very important thing that which we need to try and embody. And also the importance of knowledge. I mean, one of my personal objectives with this entire class is actually this third section here, and that is learning to appreciate the Quran's thematic placements and contextual references and contemplation. Today, we're mainly going to focus on the first one. We've got 2 more classes that are coming up. The next one is going to focus on contextual references, and the third one is going to focus on contemplation. Today is mainly about thematic contemplation. What I mean by that is, if you look at Surah Al-Baqarah, does anybody know how many verses it has? How many verses? I'm going to give the sisters a shot before the brothers can. Oh, the sisters have no clue. All right, okay, yeah.
286.
286, well done. Okay, yeah, so 2-0. All right, 2-0. Okay, 2-0. 286 verses in Surah Al-Baqarah, okay? Now, if you look at Surah Al-Baqarah, you can actually, it's defined as one chapter, but every single chapter can be broken down into sections. Just like you have a human body can be broken down into many different parts. You've got the head, you've got the arms, you've got the legs. And you need to know why they're connected in that specific manner. We want to look at why was the story of Adam placed in that specific component, in that specific part of Surah Al-Baqarah, and what relationship does it have with the verses after, and what relation does it have with the verses before it. So that's what I mean by thematic placement. And then we're also going to have some very lively discussions and debates. 2 very, very deep philosophical questions is, why are morals good or bad? Why is something good or bad? And we're specifically going to discuss a case by Plato known as Euthyphros. And the second thing is, are we free will or predestined? And hopefully at the corresponding times we're going to have some serious discussions about this, right? Just to give you guys just a build-up. Remember, we're starting from verse 30. So I just want everyone to get like a quick overview of the verses before that. So the first 20 verses that come up in Surah Al-Baqarah, right? The first 20 verses talk about 3 different types of people. The first 5, they mention about the qualities of who the believers are. What sort of descriptions does God mention about them? Number 2 is the qualities of the non-believers. And then number 3, then God tells us about the characteristics of the hypocrites, right? And this is very interesting. Before God even tells you to submit to God, worship your God, He identifies these 3 groups of people. And what's actually very interesting, as soon as He finishes talking about these 3, the next 9 verses, verses 20 to 29, it starts off with Ya ayyuhan nas, which means O people. And this encompasses everyone. Muslims, non-Muslims, absolutely everyone, absolutely every single person alive. And it consists of a lot of messages. Within them are, worship your God, who is one, has no partners associated with Him. The idea of the messenger, the finality of the messenger, and the message of the Quran, and it being the final message from God. Then the concept of a hereafter, we've got heaven, hellfire, etc. And then we also have, some of the rights of God in a very, very summarized format. And then it finally ends with the idea of pondering about life and creation, right? We need to try and use these things around us to try and get towards God. Okay? So that's a little bit of a build-up. Now, before we actually dive into the surah, I want you, because I'm sure that many people have very different ideas about the origin of man. What is the story? Is it like this? Because there seems to be a lot of confusion between the Islamic version, the Jewish version, also the Christianic version. So before we get in, I want you to form in your own circles, right, sisters and brothers, and talk about what you already know, okay? Once you've discussed that, then we'll try and see with what the surah has to say, what the verses have to say, and then you can compare and contrast. Go.
So,
Room's TV guy.
I'm the tech guy.
Okay, I'll write that.
If you guys want, you can shift the chair so you have a square block here, you have a square block here. It's up to you.
It's
I think it's better, it's more
I'm actually
discussion.
cheating.
It's up to you guys, you can range as you see. Oh yeah, muscle man right there, bro.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Baqarah,
Yeah.
that was the reason He created them. He said to the angels that I'm actually going to create a Khalifa.
You're gonna get everyone here, I think. That's more better if you
Yeah,
get.
we talked about it.
Come on, put those muscles up, man. What are you doing? See, the girls are being smart. Some of you go back and some of you stay forward.
How about we just go through it?
In the Jewish verse, the woman.
Yeah, you ever see it?
She wouldn't submit to Adam.
Okay, so look at
you
the
guys-
dynamic series. Look how quickly the sisters have managed themselves, and look how long it's
Right,
taken.
stop criticizing us and let us get on with it.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Yeah. Then the angel said, are you going to create someone that's going to cause fitna and corruption on the earth? And he goes, and the last person said, verily, I know you do not know. Then what happened was, he told, when he created Adam alayhi salam said, he sneezed. And then what happened was, he created, he told him to say to the angels all of the names of everything, all the names of everything.
In the Quran, it doesn't say
He said that,
he
he relayed
You
that.
know when
Yeah,
they're
that's it.
contrasting,
It
not
says
just
Adam
saying
and
his.
Eve.
Right, the Christian theory is that it was basically a serpent in the form of Satan came to the Garden of Eden and basically tempted Adam and his son.
Well, tempted Eve.
Yeah, tempted Eve specifically. But,
Yeah, but
And then
it
Eve
says
gave it to Adam
doesn't
to
say
eat.
to-
yeah,
because
so that's what they say.
people are trying to blame it on the woman.
But it was a joint decision.
yeah, but the Quran says that Satan put waswasa into Adam alayhi salam.
Because he,
The other thing is, the thing about not fast, not praying in the menses. Many people think about it as a punishment. It's not a punishment. It's actually because some people actually consider it as a blessing.
Yeah, that's a different topic.
No,
No, just stay on this
it's not
one.
a different
Just stay on this
topic
topic.
because it's a creation story. This is a punishment for.
Well, the thing is, some of the Christian views is like the whole reason women have that is because of the religion.
How many guys?
They get the labour pains because of original sin. So I'm contrasting it. We're saying that
Guys,
it's not,
for everyone.
it's not a thing. So we asked the topic.
While they were in heaven?
no, what were you saying about?
When he sent them down,
Oh,
he
yeah.
forgave them. We're not carrying
Say-
Interestingly,
Oh, you mean the
the
Quran?
Eden
Yeah.
version,
Yeah.
the Arabic word for Eden is Adam. Jannah and
That's
Adil.
what they say is he
Jesus got crucified too.
He would,
Yeah,
he might have been on
yeah,
heaven
so
from
everyone
many.
else
But-
is
The thing is, the thing about the
Yeah, but because those who are
I looked
Catholic.
into
Oh, is that only
it.
Catholics
It looks
who
pretty
say that?
shaky. It looks pretty shady. I don't know.
What is? What are you talking?
I love drawings.
There's a theory that Jannah, the Jannah that they were in, Jannah in Arabic means garden. So we don't know if that was actually on the original. But some people have said that, but it's very vague. It's not something like that.
Okay, guys, let's cut this off. Alright, okay, get back in your position. Alright, guys. Okay, so what have you come up with? Starting off with the sisters, what have you come up with? What did you guys? What's some of the points you come up
Here's the spokesperson.
with? Alright. Any points? So what do you guys conclude? Or what did you discuss so far?
We talked about the Jewish, Christian, Muslim differences in the Adam and Eve story.
Which are?
We talked about in the Jewish scripture there was a woman before Eve named Lilith. In the Old Testament they kind of carried the blame completely on the woman, but in the Quran it doesn't say who ate the fruit first. It just says Adam and his wife.
Okay. What have you guys discussed?
One shot.
Absolutely blank.
Okay. One of the motivations of Satan misleading Adam alayhi salam is because he thought that he was better than Adam alayhi salam.
So arrogance.
So this wasn't really relayed or portrayed in the Christian theory. قال أنا خير منه خلقتني من نار وخلقته من طين. That
Okay, we have Christian sister
Hi,
who's going to
Christian,
disagree with
there
this.
is.
So you're going to get
Same
bashed
thing.
down, man.
In the Bible we have Lucifer, the angel of God, who's actually Satan, portrayed as Satan. That's our understanding of the thing. And we have the story of Lucifer in the Old Testament wanting to be better than any creation of God and even better than God. And arrogance led him to do what he did.
But the thing is, we actually think that he does actually fear God. In Surah
Of course, he was
Al-Hashr, he
the
actually says,
best.
"Inni
His
akhafu Allah
favorite.
Rabbul Alameen." He says, "I fear Allah, the Lord of the worlds." He actually says he fears.
We also have that, like, he's the best of theologians and everything.
Okay, excellent. Okay, right. Anything else you want to add to mix? Anything else that seems to be hovering?
Oh yeah, you don't have
Yeah.
the original sin, that's what they
Original
say.
sin.
We talk about original sin.
Okay. And anything else?
Um,
Is man accountable? Woman accountable?
No.
Is woman evil?
It doesn't say
It doesn't say.
in the Quran.
That-
Okay, so
I
you're
think
unsure
they
if you're
are
evil.
accountable.
No,
I'm joking.
no, God forgave them straight away. He didn't make them carry the sin.
Okay, very good.
one of the punishment. People say that one of the punishments for this is that women during the menses they can't pray. If anything, it's actually seen as a blessing. They don't have to pray during menses.
We're talking about relationship to the verses, bro. In relation to the verse.
No, but in terms of the creation story, it's still different. It's one of the differences. They actually say the labour pains and stuff is actually a punishment.
Well, we're talking about labor or menses. We're talking about.
That's the punishment. That's the punishment in the
Yeah.
Bible too.
Okay, right.
The
Okay.
man should work and the woman should make it.
Okay, right. Okay, so wow, that's a okay. We'll go back to that. That's something. So I have a lot of sisters who will like beat you up for that. Okay, right. So obviously there seems to be a good discussion. All right, we're gonna try and hopefully see the Islamic side of things. Okay, and just try and see where we differ and where we overlap. Okay. Now, before we actually get to the description of the verses, I wanted to now basically try and reframe on how you approach the Quran, okay? How you think about the Quran. Now, how many of you, when you read, okay, let me just ask a general question to everyone, right? When you read the Quran, how do you approach it? How do you approach it? Yeah.
I pray
You
before reading it.
Okay, and when you read it, what do you experience, or how do you try? Do you visualize it? Do you think about it? How do you do it?
I try to find peace and maybe visualize it.
Maybe.
I'll never ask myself.
Okay, fine. Anything else? It's a question that I want everyone to try and think deeply about, huh?
Well, what I like to do is, I do like to memorize bits of the Quran, but before I do that, I have a little read. There's a particular section that stands out to me, and I'll have a read of it. Then what I'll do is I'll memorize it. Then, and the way I memorize it is memorizing like really short sections, reading them in Salah, also reading the translation frequently, so then I effectively memorize the translation. So when I'm actually reciting it next time, I'm always thinking about the meaning. It's always on my mind. The fact that إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ, you alone we worship, and you alone we beseech for help.
Okay.
It's always on my mind when I'm reading Surah Fatiha, for example.
All right.
Do you ever have doubts? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Do you ever have doubts?
I have doubt about what?
When I started reading the Quran as a Christian, before starting reading it, I was trying to self-indulge myself into whatever I read is true.
Okay.
So you as a Muslim ever
Okay.
have doubts when you read Quran?
I do. I'll tell you that. I do.
Right. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually addresses this in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse number 23, and He says, if you have doubt, then produce a surah like it, a surah like it. So that's what's, whenever I have a doubt, whenever that thing comes into my head, I always think about that. And I've actually thought there are actually people who've actually tried to produce likenesses of the Quran, and they couldn't. And also,
I heard the sermon Friday at the mosque. I was there.
and some of the miracles,
Alright,
and some of the miracles of the Quran make it stand out as well. That's what affirms it for
I
me.
want to get some other opinions. You put your hand up. You put your hand
I've
up.
got a question regarding doubt.
Doubt. Okay, you got a question. Okay, we'll deal with doubt later in a second.
Yes.
I want to ask, what is your approach towards the Quran? I'm not talking about learning it by heart. I'm talking in terms of reflecting. How many of you actually think and reflect?
I think an important note is like in like surahs like Baqarah, you know it says Alif Lam Mim.
Yeah.
Because you don't know the meaning to the Quran, you should approach it with humility because you don't know any of the knowledge, but Allah is like giving you this knowledge.
Okay, very good. So, I mean, this is quite similar to what the sisters mentioned as well, is that the concept of Alif Lam Mim, right? This is the opening statement of Surah Al-Baqarah, essentially. And one of the things that the commentators have mentioned is that you don't even know what the first verse means. You know? So humble yourself. And I mean, there's like a couplet, there's a poem by, what's in it, Buna Muhammad. He says that, you know, you can have all the masters and the PhDs, but you can't even explain Alif Lam Mim. So, you know, that's a means to humble yourself. You know, you don't even know what the first verse means. Okay, so we're talking about in terms of pragmatic approaches. I'm talking about, is there any active reflection done? Do you just guys see it as a text in front of you? Do you guys try to visualize it? Anything like that?
Do you mean as in produce the meanings from the words?
Yeah, do you try and incorporate a movie? Do you see a movie in front of you? Do you just see plain words? How do you try and relate to it?
It depends on the surah. Like Surah Yusuf would be easier to have a narrative.
Okay.
But class, what do you do with that?
Right. Okay, 1 second, sister. Okay, that's a diss, so I'm just... Go ahead, yeah?
I think I approach it in two ways because I know that some of the verses are based on actual events. Like a lot of them are based on actual events, historical events.
Okay.
So I approach it in two ways. One, I try to see the story in the context of the actual historical event. And two, I try to relate it to my own life and to modern life and to modern events.
Very good. You get a candy for that. Well, okay.
No candies for the ladies.
Huh? Okay, now look. Yep, what else? Last thing.
Not all of them, but some verses, it's different for everyone, but different verses have different personal effects, and when you do relate it to you, it's as if the Quran's specifically speaking out just to you, and in those instances, quite powerful because it's written for everyone, yet it's written for, it looks like it's an individual
Personalized book.
person, yeah.
Okay.
in a sense.
Okay, good, okay. Well, that's one. Okay, so Now, the reason why I asked that question is because, I mean, this is just from my experience, people just tend to think that this is just a script in front of them. But there's actually, you need to understand there are a lot of factors that take into account when you try and understand this holy text, okay? Many people, and this, I'm generalizing, but I'm just saying from my personal experience, many people, so imagine this is them, they're just going to read the script and just passively go through it, okay? But with this approach, you lose out on a lot of dimensions, okay? Now, and this is just my personal understanding, but this is how I think you should try and actively think about these verses, okay? Who was the Quran revealed to? Let's start off with that. Simple question. What?
The Prophet, isn't it?
The Prophet? Oh my days, man! Oh my days! Okay, well done. You get a candy for that.
You just missed.
Okay, so the Prophet was the person who was revealed the Quran to, okay? Now, we had two stages in the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, okay? We had the Meccan phase, right, which is the first stage of the Prophet, and then we had the Medina phase, okay? This lasted for about approximately 13 years. And how many years did this last for? 10 years. Well done, okay. So, now, there is, if you clarify the surahs in the Quran, the chapters of the Quran, they're either from this or they're either from here, okay? They're either one of the two. And the style is quite distinct. Here, the main resistance that the Muslims were facing were people of the polytheistic religion, people who believed in worshipping idols, okay? So that, and you can see that quite clearly. So these surahs that are Meccan surahs, they're mainly talking about the oneness of God, you know, the belief in the prophecy, and then accountability. And it does it in many different ways using linguistic and rhetorical devices, right? In Medina, however, it's a quite different taste that you get of the Quran. Here, the resistance was faced by what is known in the Quran as Ahl al-Kitab, people of the book. And the main two audiences are the Jewish people and the Christians who lived in Medina, right? And obviously, between both, the people are Muslims that are also sharing both of these platforms here, right? Here, the Muslims were told to basically clarify their understanding of what it means to believe in the oneness of God. And here, in the Medina phase, you see a lot of social implications. How to pray in congregation, you know, interest, how that is wrong, and so on and so forth. A lot of social laws that take place. Now, with this structure in front of you, this is how you should try and understand the Quran. So this is the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, okay? Imagine there's a stage, okay? There's like a stage here, right? Now, the Prophet Muhammad, he was getting revelation, right? So he was getting, imagine this is the narrator of the stage. He's narrating the story to you. And he's getting revelation from God. So he has like an earpiece, imagine. The audience, three parts. You have, first of all, the Muslim audience, okay? Then you also have these three people I told you about. The polytheists, the Jews, and then the Christians, right? With me so far, okay? These are actually one, they're just classed as one people of the book. And then you also have incidents which refer to only specific individuals throughout the Quran. Sometimes it's only referred to specific individuals. So we'll just call this miscellaneous people, right? Whatever. Now, so when you try to approach the Quran, the first thing you need to understand is the image that's being shown in the Quran, right? How does it relate to each of these three? So let me change the color. How does it relate to each of these three? Because each of these audience will see that in a different perspective, right? That's one thing. Another thing that you need to consider is what is the relationship between the Muslims and the other groups, right? Another factor which you might need to think about is how do all these relate with their relationship with the Prophet, right? And now you see that is a much, much more encompassing understanding when you try now approach the Quran, right? That's why commentary of the Quran is very, very important. Because when you're reading it, you're just reading the text, but there's a lot of context behind it. And that's why it's very, very important to consider the full image that's taking place. Is that quite clear, right? Do you see the difference between reading as a static text and fully understanding the situation behind it, right? Does everyone get that? Does anyone have any questions behind that? No? You okay?
Yeah.
You look like Charlie Chaplin today for some reason, bro. Alright, okay, cool. Excellent. So, now we can start off with the actual verses, okay? So I'm just gonna, go over the English, right? So, and then it says, quickly, and mention, O Muhammad, when your Lord said to the angels, indeed I'll make upon the earth a successive authority. They said, and they mean referring to the angels, will you place upon it one who causes corruption therein and sheds blood, while we declare your praise and sanctify you? Allah said, indeed I know that which you do not know. Right? So this is the initiation of the dialogue that takes place between the angels and Allah. Right? Those are the first two people that take place into this conversation. Now, the first thing which we need to address is, okay, Allah said, indeed I'll make upon the earth a successive authority. Inni ja'alun fil ardi khalifa. Now, khalifa is a term that's been used a lot across. What does khalifa actually mean?
Is the correspondent for the English?
Yeah. Okay, alright, okay. So I'm going to give you candy because this is a preemptive strike, right? So, a successive authority is this word here, khalifa, okay? But there's a lot of, in Arabic, it's not just literally one translation, there are a lot of connotations attached to it, okay? So, no problem. Afwan, well done, okay, right, I'll give you another candy for that.
No, already can, thank you.
Okay, so, okay, wait, how many Arabs have we got here? We've got none from the brothers, one, are you Arab? You're not, you're Arab, are you Arab? Or are you Indo-Pak? Are you Indo-Pak?
What's that?
Indo-Pak.
I'm Arab.
Where are you from?
I'm from Guli.
Yeah, okay, Indo-Pak. Alright, you're Indo-Pak. Okay, right. I consider them all in one go. Okay, right. Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, India, all Indo-Pak, right? Just wait. Okay, right. So, getting back to this.
What does it mean successive? That it comes from God or that it will...
Yeah, excellent. Very good question. Alright. So I'm asking the Arabs here, what does Khalifa mean? What does that term mean? Or anyone can try. Yes, go for it.
Is it a guardian on earth?
Guardian of Earth. Okay, that encompasses one of the meanings. Right?
Steward.
Huh? Steward. Like a steward.
Yeah, like steward is someone like kind of.
Caretaker.
Yeah.
Caretaker. Okay. So I had a different thing in mind. Okay. Alright.
Were you thinking of like an air hostess or something?
Yeah, because I was just flying. I just flew the other day, man. So I was thinking of air hostess. So what was he saying? Anything else? Anything else attached to it? Okay.
Ruler?
Sorry?
Ruler.
Ruler. Okay, that's a very good one. Okay, ruler.
God told Adam to name all the animals and the name that
Okay, very, very good. Okay, excellent. Okay, very good. That's in the next verse that's going to come up. So, now look, to fully understand the meaning of Khalifa, alright, I'm going to try and display to you a scenario, and hopefully that'll make much more sense. Imagine there is a landowner. He's got a farm, okay? But he's too busy and he wants to delegate looking after the farm to somebody, right? And there are many people he can hire, many people, right? But he wants to choose someone who understands basic understandings of how to operate a farm. So he chooses you guys, okay? He chooses you. Imagine you're chosen. And imagine, just for an instance, you're married at the moment. You've got your own husband, your own wife, and kids, etc., right? So your family has been selected. Your family has been selected, and you are now told to look after this farm, right? And the landowner told you, if you look after it properly for 40 years, I will give you that farm and much more. I'll give you $40 million, all right, if you look after it properly. And he said, you have to follow 3 main principles. As the chosen person for looking after this farm, you've got to maintain a certain code of conduct. Meaning, you have to behave well, you have to make sure you don't insult people, you look after yourself and everyone else. Second thing is you got to make sure that when other people do wrong, you've got to rectify that. So if you see your mother or your father arguing over silly things, you've got to try and rectify it, right? The third thing you must do is make sure that the farm itself is fine, right? That the crops are growing sufficiently, people are not consuming it more than they can eat, people are not making a mess out of the farmland. Otherwise, it'll all go wrong. And there are cameras in every place of the farm. So the owner is always looking at you. That is a summary of what Khalifa means. 3 relationships are established. First of all, you have to rectify yourself. You have to be a better person. Learn to understand what your morals are. Number 2, like the situation of the farm, you got to make sure everyone else is behaving according to the laws that have in place. And number 3, wherever you live, you've got to try and maintain the environment around you. So the food, the crops, and all sorts of pollution and landfills that we're doing, that is our responsibility. You're going to be held responsible for that. Now, just a further dimension that you need to add to that, as mentioned here, it means someone who is successive. So there's a time dimension after this. You're just in a link of a chain. You're just in a link of a chain. Inshallah, in the future, you guys are going to get married, you guys are going to have kids, right? What are you going to leave for your kids? You're going to go in the graveyard at one point, in one day or another. So what are you leaving behind for them? And then what are they going to leave behind for their kids? So on and so forth. That is the full contextual understanding of a Khalifa. Does that make sense? Right? Does that make sense? Right. So this is what we need to try and establish. The first thing that God told the angels, that I'm establishing someone who's going to look after this planet and also try and rectify and try and be a just person. Okay? Now, the angels, they have a very interesting response. This is what the angel said. Will you place upon it one who causes, 2 things they mentioned. One who causes corruption therein and sheds blood. 2 things they mentioned. Right? 2 things they mentioned. Now, I wanted to ask you, right? Corruption means anything evil. Like fasad means absolutely anything. It can be as small as trying to cheat someone, or it can be as big as trying to get involved in interest. Okay, it can be anything. And then the ultimate, the most disgraceful form of fasad or evil is what? It's killing people, right? It's killing people. Now let me ask you guys. I want you guys to think about this. How did the angels come up with such a question like that? How did they come up with that? If I'm telling you, okay guys, there's gonna be, there's gonna be a new teacher here, okay? And then suddenly one of you says, oh, you're gonna bring another one who's gonna try and blame us and criticize, etc. Where did that perception come from?
Is it because there was never before creation that free will? That was the first time.
Free will. Okay, sort of.
Oh, because the jinn were there before humankind.
Okay, excellent. Okay, now we're getting interesting here. Okay. So jinn, right? Jinn, devil. Yes, they're known as the devils. Okay. Right. So one theory. There are multiple theories behind this, by the way. There are multiple theories behind this, by the way. And this is where it gets very interesting because we can get into evolution with this topic. So one theory is that jinns, Satans, okay, they were the ones that lived here before us, and they caused a lot of anarchy, a lot of bloodshed. And so God removed them through the command of God himself, right? And then he brought Adam forth. And then the angel was like, okay, whoa. You're going to bring another one that's going to do the same thing, right? That's one theory. What else?
Before the jinn, there was actually a kind called the bin kind. And the jinn were actually created to drive the bin kind out of earth. And an actual little correction for what you said about the jinns being shaitans, that's not true. If you look into the Surah Nas, surely we have to be careful about, not all jinns are shaitan, but all shaitans are jinns, right?
No, it's the opposite.
Really?
All jinns are shaitan, not all shaitans are jinn. Never mind. So the word I'm using, shaitan.
No, Charles right.
All jinns are shaitan.
No, he's saying that
all
was it.
shaitans are jinns, but jinn can be Muslim.
No, shaitan can also be mankind. So I'm getting more theoretical.
Oh yeah, that's
Okay,
true.
so that's why I didn't get to be there.
But,
So you're both wrong.
Huh? Okay.
Basically,
Smart man.
the point I'm trying to make is though, there are Muslim jinns. Like the way you put it across is like all jinns.
Okay, sorry, my bad. Okay, right. Yes.
You might
How
think
about
that's all.
God discussing his plans about mankind with the angels?
Okay, yeah. So I mean, there's the idea is one of the scholars did interpret that this shows the idea of.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's the win for the girls.
It's a win for the girls, right? So one of the things that you take away as a lesson from it is the idea of consultation. Whenever you make a decision, you consult with people. That's one of the lessons that well done for taking that up, right? But going back to the theory of how the angels perceive the idea that this creation is going to kill and cause a lot of fasad, a lot of corruption on earth. So one idea is that there was, jinn beforehand, right? Another theory is that there was another creation called the bin kind. We don't know how they are. It's just one of the hadiths that's mentioned in Ibn Kathir. And this is where it gets even more interesting. One of the fears mentioned.
What about the bin?
The bin was this is very, very mysterious, etc., all sorts of stuff. It's very interesting if you look into it. In Ibn Kathir, which is he's the most prolific commentators of the Quran, he has a hadith where he mentions that there was another creation before humankind called the bin kind. Right? We don't know anything about them, but there was another creation. And we don't know whether they were there as a test, or whether whatever, Allahu Alam, God knows best, right? But they were there before us. So that's another thing where the angels might have gotten the idea where, these guys are going to kill and
Do you know
cause
what hadith says?
I don't know, what's it called? I picked up from a lecture of Sheikh Mufti Ismail. Yeah. But it's also in Ibn Kathir in the Arabic version, you can get it, right? A third interpretation is that it could refer to a completely different creation, right? And for me, this is where it gets interesting. So where they're now they're finding all these fossilized human-like skulls, etc., and they're talking about Neanderthals and all these sort of things. They are very close to being humans, but are not humans. This could fit into this understanding. There's also, for me, I always wanted to question, how many million years ago was it that the dinosaurs lived? Does anybody know? 60 million years. 60 million years.
60 to 80 million.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, I always question why did God leave us skeletons of the dinosaurs? Is that a reminder? Is that a cautionary warning? Something like that. So that's also something to think about. For me, that's a very, very interesting field to talk about. Scholars have differed exactly what it is. The strongest opinion does seem to be that jinn, the creation of, I'm not going to say evil, but the jinn kind, they were the ones before us. They caused a lot of blood, a lot of watershed, etc. And that's why the angels had this perceived notion that humankind is going to do the same thing. But I definitely recommend, especially the biologists, try and look into that. Because the idea of evolution can fit into this. And God knows best.
Does that mean that the jinn were
What?
humans?
Sorry?
Does that mean that the jinn had the body, or?
No, so we know that jinns have form, we know that, but they're made out of fire, whereas we're made out of clay, right? It doesn't mean they have to be the exact same structure as us, it's just that there was just another creation before us.
Because I was wondering where the blood comes from.
Yeah, no. So, does that make sense to everyone? Yeah? You seem confused. Okay?
I think you're saying that where it says corruption therein and sheds blood. So jinns don't, or as far as I'm aware, don't have blood, so
How did they bleed?
would it be
Well, they
Okay. You guys, okay, look.
No, that's what the sister was asking.
That's what she's asking, that's all.
Okay, alright, okay. So I think it could be symbolic. I don't know, I can't really answer that for you. It could be symbolic. I can take it as okay, blood came out of this person. I'm just saying that this person is
I
somehow
don't know
dying.
what's before, but how about if this discussion takes place after Adam and Eve multiplied? Does it take place after?
No, this is while Adam is being created. This is at the initial point when Adam is created. Right?
Yeah, but arrogance was there already. Pride was there.
Yeah, pride was there, but we're gonna see that later on. Hopefully, is that clear to everyone? Yeah. Okay, excellent. Right. So that's one thing we need to talk about, right? Now, and then they continue on to say, so why are you creating this creation when we're the ones who are praising you and glorifying you? You don't need these people, right? So you have to make sure that angels are not evil creations. Because from our perspective, angels are not evil creations, right? So they weren't saying this out of arrogance. They were not saying this out of arrogance. Why are you creating another creation? They were just asking in their own humbleness that, we're praising you, we're worshiping you as very obedient slaves. So what is the point of this other creation? Now God, he has a very interesting response. He says, I know that which you do not know. Right? I know that which you do not know. Now, I told you the definition of a khalifa. It involves the meaning of trying to rectify yourself and also trying to rectify other people. Okay? And it also means trying to look after the environment around you. Now, what did Adam do, right? Adam, he committed a sin, which we'll later find out, but then he rectified himself, right? And we also know that God is going to send prophets and messengers towards the earth who can uphold the justice. So God actually takes pride. He takes pride in you if you try and uphold justice. Try and do things that go against things that cause corruption. Try and go against from people dying in a legal manner. So if anything that you do, it can be as simple as throwing a rubbish on the side rubbish bin, as a sake of trying to act with goodwill, that is trying to seek God's pleasure. You understand? That is upholding justice to its ultimate best, right? If you try and stay away from trying to steal from people, trying to stop yourself from trying to take interest from people, God is taking pride in you. There's a hadith, there's an Islamic tradition, right? Where I'm going to mention two. The first one, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he said that if you see something wrong in front of you, try and stop it with your hand. And if you can't stop it with your hand, then stop it with your and then if you can't stop it with your tongue, then with your heart. Admit that it's wrong in your heart. And that's the weakest level of faith. So that in and of itself inculcates that we should try and always uphold what is right and always try and negate what is wrong. And just to seal the deal of this entire conclusion, there's a hadith, there's an Islamic narration where the Prophet, he stumbled upon certain companions and he saw them talking about God or doing like remembrance of God. And the Prophet asked them, why are you here? He's like, we're just here to try and remember God. And the Prophet asked them, is that the only reason why you're here? And they said, yes. And the Prophet said, I just got informed by angels Gabriel, right, that God is boasting about you in front of the angels. Right? So the fact that you guys have taken the steps to come here, God is boasting about you to the angels. So take pride in that. Not boastful pride, but good pride, hopefully, right? Good pride in yourself, alright? Is that clear on that verse? Okay, excellent. So, then he said, right, he taught Adam, and this is where now God goes
This one from the Bible.
Yeah. So then it said, God taught Adam the names, all of them. Then he showed them to the angels, inform me the names of these if you are truthful. So, I want you to now, again, get back into your little groups, right? What do you think God taught Adam? You can go in your groups, have discussions.
You have to go over here.
Don't tell me anime, huh? Sorry? Yeah.
I thought it was a
Minority. Most of them are Jewish people.
Yeah.
Most of them.
Even the Jews were a minority.
No, they weren't. So we have the narration of the hadith where the Christians, they went to the Jannah, they went to the mosque.
No, it says
There were some Christians.
Were they residents?
I don't know if they're residents. Because the thing is, otherwise he could have said Yahud in the Quran. But he also said
Could that include
Well, not animals.
others, like
I
not
think it
just
was like
Christians?
stuff in
Sa'ibi, Zoroastrian.
like birds
Does it
and
include
all of that.
I don't know, like there's one
That's why,
ayah
like,
where they mentioned, so Allah mentioned
name
the
stuff as well.
Yahud, the Nasara, and the Sa'ibi. So that means
Well, the Sabians, they're those people that apparently have the people of North. Well, I don't
Nuh
know.
alayhi salam,
North,
yeah.
I was just one of the sons.
Maybe, yeah. But I do know like from my knowledge that my Allah and I might be wrong, but as I'm aware, there were some Christians that were there.
Christians that will work.
Sorry?
Christians that will work.
Anyways, talk about what do you mean?
Yeah, no, but I thought we were talking about what
Shah said the name.
Or it's even that all of what has been created.
Yeah.
And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just pointed out
Of creation.
all of creation basically.
Well, I think Christianity, I think it's the name of that one. That's why I read that.
The thing is, we can't.
Well, that is Christianity. I don't actually name himself. Well, I can't remember. This is like the year 8 of Christianity.
And they're obviously everything that the angels don't know about. The angels
You know, I
don't
compare
know
you to
about.
them, and you guys are suck at discussion.
Thank you.
That's why God said, let's make them a help.
It says if you are
What do you think?
how would saying the name.
You read people the angels as well,
How
yeah?
you guys find the class?
No, but the thing is, like, if it was the angels, like, they know their own names because he's asking you,
Yeah.
call me the names of your angels.